Hi lovelies! Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria and today's video is going to be me just giving you 10 recommendations that I think you should add to your autumn TBR. Now, I know we're still in the height of summer. We've actually been having a bit of a heat wave here in Ireland as well for the last week, so might not be feeling the autumn vibes for everyone, but for me personally, in August, I tend to start a lot of my autumn reads. So if you're anything like me, even if you haven't started your autumn reads, you're probably planning what you're going to be reading for the next few months. So I thought it would be fun to put this list together just to give you a few ideas of things that I think you should be reading this year. Now, I did do a video similar to this last year. There was probably a lot more suggestions. I think I was a little bit more thorough in terms of quantity of suggestions last year as well. So I'll link those in the description if you do want to go back and watch some of those. But I kind of trimmed it down this year to maybe books that you may not have heard of, maybe some of the more underhyped books, but some of these are very hyped books. So I just did want to add them in because I do think they're really great autumn reads. But some of them may be ones that you maybe haven't heard as much about. So wanted to add them in because I do think that they are really good choices for autumn reads. So yeah, I'm basically going to be giving you 10 suggestions for books I think you should be adding to your autumn TBR. Technically there is 11, but 2 of them are from the same author, so I'm kind of counting them as one suggestion. And you can't really see it, but I do have my new t-shirt that I got from bookishbabes.com. I think it's Bookish Babe Design or something like that. Really, really cute. Seen the design when I put it up on Threads and ordered it basically straight away. So I know you can't see it in the frame, but just know that I'm emanating all of the kind of autumn and spooky vibes, even though none of these books are spooky. I don't like the horror genre. I'm a bit of a wimp, so if you're looking for horror recommendations, you're not going to get them here. These are going to be more cutesy, cozy, maybe a bit gothic, dark academia, more of that type of kind of autumnal read. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the recommendations. So I'm going to start up with most of the more kind of cozy, maybe romance side of things, and the first book that I want to suggest is one that I've actually read recently, and that's A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. Now, I absolutely loved this book, and I've loved everything I've read from this author. Granted, it only has been 2 books set within the same world, but I've really, really enjoyed her kind of take on cozy fantasy. I think it's actually kind of the perfect bridge book for going between summer into autumn/fall as well. In this one, we're following Sarah, who, when she was young, cast a spell that ended up depleting her magic entirely, and the spell that she cast was actually against the laws for the magic guild within this world, so she ends up being shunned by that guild. And usually within this world her magic would start kind of replenishing itself, but for whatever reason Sarah's magic isn't doing that. So basically since she's been 15 she's been living without magic and been trying to find a way to get that magic back ever since. She's also running an inn with her great aunt Jasmine, and it's one of the best things about this book is we do have an inn that's a bit of a sentient character within here, so definitely adds to those cozy vibes. And we have a ragtag group of people in there that kind of have this found family. So we've got a cursed fox, we've got a skeletal chicken, we've got an old lady who kind of loves to plant vegetables in the garden, and we've got a young man who thinks he is a knight. And they've all been living in this inn for some time, and the magical thing about the inn is that it only shows up for people who really need it. So these group of people have kind of come together in different times of their lives because they've really needed something from this inn. In comes another character called Luke Larson, who is a witch within the guild. He's kind of a historian within that guild, and he's been having a challenging time because he has a young sister who is also magic and also has autism, so she's not really sure how to kind of control her magic, when she's allowed to use it, because humans within this world don't know about magic and anyone who has it has to hide it. So been quite a struggle for him because his parents have kind of shrugged her off as being too difficult. He did try to take her to the guild, but again she's not really sure on the societal cues there, so he's been really struggling to find a place for her, and obviously this inn provides that place for them. And basically it ends up with Luke and Sarah kind of grouping together to try and work out a way to get her magic back. And what I really appreciate about this one is, even though this is kind of a cozy fantasy, there is kind of a romance within here as well that we're following. There is quite a good bit of world building in here, and I really appreciate how deep Sangu Mandana goes into that world building, because I think it just really gets me invested in this story and it makes it not feel as surface level as some other cozy fantasies that I have read. And somehow within her writing she just really gets me invested in her characters from the first page. I was really invested in Sarah within this, loved all of kind of the ragtag found family group within here as well, and honestly it's just like a big warm hug of a book. And for me it's just the perfect bridge book between kind of the summer and the autumn time, because it does have kind of that light and fuzzy romance feel to it, but definitely has that element of autumnal coziness with the witchy side of it as well. So definitely highly recommend this one, as well as her other book, which is actually the first book set within this world. say this wrong every time. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. So this one is set in the same world. They're not really connected in terms of storylines or anything, so you can kind of read them in whichever order you prefer. But this was the first one to come out, so if you prefer to kind of read it as they've come out, you can read this one first. And this one we follow Mika Moon, who is a woman who is a witch but has been told to kind of hide her magic and stay away from other witches, because when too many witches get together it can cause chaos. And Mika has been doing that for her entire life until one day she gets a letter from this random stranger basically asking her to come and help tutor 3 young witches who are in this person's care. And Mika takes a chance and goes to tutor these young girls, and the story kind of goes from there. I don't like to give too much away from this one because again, it's not a huge amount of plot. There's a bit more of vibes within these books, but it's just done really, really well. And again, there's a bit of a romance in this one, cozy witchy vibes, and I just think either of these are a really great book to read, probably in the September time, to get you ready for some of those more intense fall reads. But if you're still feeling a little bit summery or wanting to get that little bit of romance in before the autumn season comes in, I think this and A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping are both perfect books to do that. So next up is one you will definitely have heard of, I'd imagine, and it's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. And again, this is kind of perfect, maybe more for further into the autumnal season, because it is very cozy and definitely screams autumnal read. I mean, just look at the sprayed edges on this one. If that doesn't scream autumnal, I don't know what does. But in this one we're following Viv, who has been basically a barbarian warrior for her entire life. She is an orc, so I'll just show you some of the art on the inside as well. So definitely a fantasy read, this one, but it is a bit more slice of life with this, because essentially Viv has decided she wants to hang up kind of her warrior boots and set up a coffee shop in a small town within this world. And this one was just, as I say, the epitome of a cozy read. They're very low stakes, you know, nothing too crazy happening within this one. I think with Sangu Mandana's books there are actually quite high stakes within there, you know, the consequences of certain things not happening could be quite dire, but with this one there are some stakes but they're not really that high. So definitely a very low impact read, and this one's quite a short one as well, so I think if you had kind of a cozy afternoon planned with a nice hot drink and a blanket when the weather gets a little bit cooler, this would be a perfect book to read alongside having a coffee, and have a sweet treat on hand with this one because there's a lot of talk about cinnamon buns, cakes and things like that. So again, just a really cozy comfy read. I don't like to give too much of the synopsis of this one just because, as I say, I don't want to spoil anything for you going into it, but I read this one within a day and really, really enjoyed it. So again, another one to recommend to anyone who's looking for a bit of a more cozy read. So next up we'll go into some of the romances I would recommend for the autumn season, and the first one is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. Now you will have heard of Ashley Poston more than likely, especially when related to her book The 7-Year Slip, which I do love. I do really enjoy that one, but the first book I read from her was actually this one, The Dead Romantics, and I think this one is a perfect autumn read. So the premise of this one is we've got a young woman called Florence Day who is basically a ghostwriter for a really popular romance author, and she ends up getting a new agent who's really pushing her to get a book in by this certain deadline. For different reasons within her life, she's not really feeling that inspired recently and wants to try and push that deadline back. But her new editor is a bit of a grump and basically says no. Around the same time, she ends up getting some news from home that means she has to travel home to her small hometown, and when she gets there she actually bumps into her new editor, but the only problem is he is now a ghost. So we're kind of following the story along, trying to figure out why he's there, why he's a ghost, then watching their relationship kind of bloom. But there's a lot in here about kind of grief and things like that, so just trigger warnings for anyone who may be affected by that. But one thing I do think about Ashley Poston is she deals with grief so well, so it's definitely another part of this book that I really, really loved. But if you've read some of her other books and you weren't sure whether you were going to venture back to read this one, I would definitely highly recommend it. And just because of the setting with this one, I do think that it's better as an autumnal read because we kind of have scenes in graveyards and things like that, and it is set around more the autumn time as well. So if you're looking for a nice romance to read around this time of year, I think this one would be a great one to pick up. As would This Spells Love by Kate Robb, and this is one I haven't seen anyone else talking about really. I actually got an ARC for this one before it came out and was really happy when I did. It was probably one of the first ARCs I ever got on NetGalley, so that's why I think it kind of holds a little bit of a special place in my heart for that reason, because it just felt like such a privilege being able to get an early copy of someone's book, you know. But really glad to say that I did obviously really enjoy it as well. So in this one we've got Gemma, who has kind of come to a point in her life where she just wants to change. She kind of thinks to herself, what if certain things happened and what if certain things didn't happen? So she's basically had a really bad breakup and is thinking to herself one night, what if the relationship just never happened? What if I could just wipe it from my life? I feel like things would be so much better. Lo and behold, she goes to bed one night and wakes up the next day and her life has completely changed. So much so that her best friend Dax doesn't remember who she is. Now at add into this that she has always kind of held a little bit of a flame for her friend Dex, and this kind of gives her an opportunity to think, what if things were different between them as well? And the story kind of goes from there. Again, it's just quite a cozy, fun romance. Really enjoyed the way this one was written. I think if you like anything like practical magic, a bit of a rom-com twist, I think you'll really like this one as well. And I think with this one, you definitely need to have some coffee and a sweet treat on hand as well. I remember reading this one and just consistently being hungry because of some of the descriptions of the food in here. But as I say, really enjoyed this one. Definitely a nice, cute, fun, cozy romance to read around the autumn time, and one I think deserves definitely a bit more hype. Okay, so moving on to some of the more kind of gothic reads, and the first one is one that you're definitely going to have heard of, and it's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This one does seem to be pretty divisive when it comes to people who have read it. They either really love it or really hate it. So one thing I would say about this one is it's very slow paced, it's a lot more introspective and contemplative than some of her other reads, so you're not going to be getting kind of scene after scene of action with this one. It's a lot more of a character study about Addie LaRue within here, and kind of what it would mean to be immortal and how much other humans kind of impact your life. That's kind of the overall story that you get with this one, but it's just wrapped up in some beautiful prose and delivered in such a beautiful way. So if you haven't heard of the synopsis of this one, we're basically following Addie LaRue from, I think it's around the 1700s or something like that, and she's coming to an age where she's basically going to have to settle down and get married and have children, and she just wants more than that for her life. She doesn't want to kind of conform to societal norms within this time, and ends up making a deal with the devil to be able to live forever. And essentially we're following along with her life as she navigates this world of living forever, being immortal. However, there is one catch, that no one will remember her when they meet her. And as I say, it's really exploring that idea of how much impact do other people have on our lives, what does a life mean if no one remembers you, and how would that kind of affect you as a human. But then it comes to present day within this story and someone does remember her, and again it's just about how that kind of changes everything for her. But yeah, this is just one of those reads that has really stuck with me, but I know it's not for everyone because it is very slow. There's not a lot of plot in here other than kind of following Addie LaRue. It's more character development, and as I say, it is kind of more of an introspective read. But for me, it was just absolutely beautiful. The language was beautiful, the writing was beautiful, I just think the overall concept was beautiful, and yeah, it's a book that's really had a huge impact on me, so definitely one I would recommend to anyone who likes maybe a bit more literature fiction leaning stories. I think this would definitely be a good bridge into kind of the fantasy realm, because it's definitely a bit more magical realism within this than pure fantasy, but I just think it's such a beautiful story and would recommend that everyone give it a go. And for me personally, it's one of my absolute favourite books, so I always highly recommend it. Next up, we've got Belladonna, which is a kind of a mix between a gothic romantasy with a murder mystery as well, and this is YA, but there definitely are some dark themes in here as well. And this story, we're following Signa, who has basically been passed from pillar to post her entire life. When she was very young, her parents passed away, and since then she's been passed from family member to family member who only really want to take care of her so that they can hopefully get a piece of her wealth when she turns 18. Now, death seems to follow Signa within this world, and essentially all of her family members have died apart from the Hawthorns, who she ends up going to stay with within this book. But when she gets there, she actually ends up getting embroiled in kind of this murder mystery because her aunt, who had recently passed away, ends up appearing to her and telling her that someone within the house actually is responsible for her death. And the story goes from there, and one thing to say is that Death is actually a character within here who Signa becomes quite close with, so definitely gives you kind of all those spooky gothic vibes, and as I say, it has a bit of a murder mystery in there as well to keep you entertained. I just really loved this one. Again, I think the writing is really lush and beautiful in here, and I actually love this full trilogy. I think the third book was probably my favourite within the trilogy, but I really did love this first book. It definitely pulled me in, definitely got me intrigued, and I just think that Adeline Grace's writing is absolutely beautiful as well. So if you do like a bit more flowery prose, I would highly recommend this one to give it a go. And because of kind of the gothic and murder mystery theme in here, I just think autumn is the perfect time to pick up this series. Next up is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young, and again I think this author is pretty well known, probably more for her book The Unmaking of June Farrow, but this was the first book I read by her, which was I think the year before June Farrow came out. And in this one we're following Emery, who has lived in her hometown her entire life. It's quite a small town based on an island, so kind of everybody knows everyone within this town, and her life changes forever when she's in high school as the love of her life is actually accused of murdering her best friend Lily. So he actually ends up leaving the island and comes back 10 years later when his mother passes away to retrieve her ashes, and at this point obviously they reconnect and the story goes from there. They're trying to work out what happened to Lily that night so that they can maybe prove his innocence, and we're really just following that story along within this. And again, it's kind of a murder mystery side of things. This one is quite slow paced as well, but it just gives kind of those dark and eerie vibes, and I just really loved the atmosphere that was built within here. And again, Adrienne Young's writing is really beautiful as well, so if you're looking for something that's a bit more lyrical and has a bit of a murder mystery in the background, definitely check this one out if you haven't read it already. And if you like June Farrow, I think you'll like this one as well, because it is that same kind of pace, more character driven as June Farrow was as well. So I think if you like that one, you'll probably like this one as well. Okay, and for the last three books, they're all going to be kind of dark academia, but I think they're three quite different ones. So the first one that I've got is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Now, this is one of those books that's probably in everyone's autumn reading recommendation videos, because it's basically one of the epitome of dark academia, and it's kind of compared to The Secret History quite a lot. And even though I've read both of those and I can see what people are saying, I do think it's quite different. I do think they were both very different, and kind of preferred this one a little bit to The Secret History, even though I did really enjoy that one. I think I enjoyed this one just a little bit more. In this one, we're following around, I think it's around 6 students within this Shakespearean kind of college, and essentially we're watching them as they try and figure out who killed one of the members of their class. And essentially the story starts out 10 years after the event, where the main character Oliver Marks has been in prison for 10 years for the murder of that classmate, and we're basically kind of going back in time, seeing snapshots of that time, of all the different characters interacting with each other and trying to figure out who was the real perpetrator. Was it Oliver, who was in jail for it, or was it one of the other members of the group? And what I really loved about this was just the character work. I really loved how deplorable some of the characters were, how people you should have been rooting for might have still been unlikable, how I really felt like the people who maybe we shouldn't be rooting for were still really compelling to read about. And I think there was just so many visceral reactions with this one. You know, there were some characters that I really hated, some characters that I really loved, even when they were doing the wrong thing. And I just loved kind of the grandiose drama of this one as well. I know that people have been scared off of this one because they feel like you may need to know Shakespeare to read this, and personally I don't think you do. I mean, I read Shakespeare when I was in school, like most of us will have, but I don't have an in-depth knowledge of the plays or anything like that, and it definitely didn't take away from my enjoyment of this one. They do quote Shakespeare quite a lot in here, but I mean, if you're pretty well read, you're probably going to understand the quotes anyway, and it definitely didn't take away from my enjoyment in this one, so don't let that put you off picking this one up. But yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this one. Definitely didn't see the twist coming at the end, and I just think that this one's kind of a modern classic for a reason. And as I say, I did really enjoy The Secret History. I have read both of them and really enjoyed them both for different reasons, but if I had to pick between the two and I only had time to read one this autumn, I think this is the one I would be picking up. Then next up we have A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and this is the first in the Scholomance series, which is a 3-book series, and I really loved this one. Again, I think this one's a little bit divisive in terms of people who either love it or hate it. I do think that the pacing in here was a little bit slow in the first book, and the main character isn't the most likable, but I think that's part of her charm, and I ended up loving her by the end of the trilogy, so do with that what you will. But in this one we've got basically a magical academy where there's no teachers, there's no holidays or anything like that. The kids are kind of in this school to kind of fend for themselves, and they come across all different types of things like monsters and demons and things like that, and it's all part of their schooling. Our main character, Elle Higgins, is a young woman who is kind of pessimistic. She's not really kind of the nicest or warmest main character, but I really loved her character in terms of how she's so headstrong, quite sarcastic, and is really trying her best not to make friends, but despite that she ends up making quite a few friends along the way in here. And I just thought this was so different to anything I've read in terms of the dark academia genre. I think if you liked anything like Harry Potter when you were growing up, you'll probably like this as well. I'm not comparing the stories because they are very different. I just think kind of the vibes of this one gave me that same kind of feeling. And again, I just think Naomi Novik's writing is absolutely beautiful, and I do think this is a bit of an underrated series. I can say that when I look at reviews I can see it as quite divisive, so maybe it's just a case of I'm one of those people that loves it, but for me I do think it's underhyped and deserves a bit more love. So if you're looking for a dark academia that has quite a high fantastical element to it, I definitely think this would be a good one for you to pick up, because even though it's based within a school, there's quite a rich world building within this, and I really loved watching it progress kind of from book 1 to book 3, where it really widens out within this world. And yeah, I hardly ever see anyone talking about this one, so would really just love to see more people reading it and giving it a bit of hype, because I definitely think it deserves it. And then last up is another dark academia, and it's Babel or Babel by R.F. Kuang. And this one I think is just one of those books that is going to make you think. It's going to make you question your own morals, it's going to make you question your own beliefs, what you've been taught your entire life, and I just think the way she done it was so masterful, and I just hugely appreciated how she kind of entwined it into this historical dark academia kind of fantasy world, even though it is very reflective of the world and history that's happened in real life. And I think for that reason the messaging behind this was just so poignant and really packed a punch. So in this one we're following Robin Swift, who was actually taken from Canton as a young boy when the English were there kind of colonizing colonising essentially. He was very young when he was taken from there, and essentially he was adopted by an English lord who has basically given him his education his entire life so that he can prepare to go to Oxford to essentially study language and translation, as within this world we basically have these silver bards that run the entire country, as they are imbued with magical spells that only people who are able to translate certain languages are able to build. So we're basically following Robin as he embarks on his journey within the university, and that's kind of the broader foundation of what this story is. But as you read on, it is so much more about kind of dangers of translation, how messaging can be lost with translation, how can you really understand the nuance of something that has been translated from one language to English basically, and essentially looking at how it can be so dangerous to scrub away, you know, the original text or anything like that when it has been translated, because the messaging can be completely changed when it goes from its original language to the language that you're translating to. And obviously there's themes in here of racism and colonialism and genocide and all those different things that I think are quite uncomfortable to read about, but at the same time it was just done in such a poignant way and really made me think about how I've maybe viewed certain things, or just even things that I didn't think about that would be impactful in the history of this world and history that we have that has been kind of told to us, and how things may be not all as they seem. So this is a pretty heavy book. It's not kind of a light and fluffy read or anything, but I really loved the characters in here. I did come deeply invested in them, and I just think it was such, as I say, a poignant story that if you like dark academia and you're also interested in the history of translation, I think there's been quite a lot of research done within this, and I definitely feel like I learned quite a lot from reading this as well. So yeah, not a light and fluffy one or a cozy one to kind of recommend for the autumn season, but if you are looking for a bit more of a deeper book to read, I would highly recommend this one, because yeah, it was just such an amazing read and one that I really thought about for, you know, months afterward, and prompted me to do some research on certain things as well. So it's not often a book can really kind of get into my mind in such a way that this one did. So if you haven't read it yet, or if you've been putting it off and it's on your TBR, definitely pick it up. I really highly recommend the audiobook actually as well, because what puts some people off this one as well is there are footnotes, and I'm not really a lover of footnotes, I'm going to be totally honest. So listening to the audiobook definitely made this flow a lot easier, because the footnotes are just read as part of the story. So you didn't kind of have to jump up and down when you're reading it, because I know some people hate that, me included. It's not something I prefer. So yeah, if you're going to read this one but you're a little bit daunted kind of by the size or by that reading format, I highly recommend the audiobook for this one, because it was really good. So yeah, that's it. That's the 10/11 books that I'm recommending you put on your TBR this year. As I say, I've got a couple of videos that I did do last year which have much longer lists of books I think are great autumnal reads, so I'll link those in the description below if you are interested in checking those out as well. But definitely let me know your top autumn recommendations or your top fall recommendations. What books are you going to be reading this year? And kind of making my TBR as we speak. So once I've got that together, I probably will do another video going through some of those books. But since I'm still making my list, it would be great to know what you're putting on your list, and if you think there's anything I should be adding to mine as well. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I post 2 videos per week, and it's videos like this, so recommendation videos, TBR videos, reading vlogs, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!